Welcome to Unit 5, Chapter 15, The Intellectual Development of Preschoolers. How do brain refinements in preschoolers lay a foundation for reasoning skills, and how can parents and other adults provide support for their higher level thinking, mental functioning? That is the essential question of this whole unit. Unit 5, Section 1 is How Preschoolers Learn. After studying this lesson, you will be able to relate how brain development and symbolic thought aid the emergence of new thinking skills in preschool children, summarize the changes in pretend play, mental images, drawing, language, and memory that occur during the preschool years, explain the major changes that occur between the preconceptual and intuitive substages of the preoperational stage, describe the 5 major obstacles to preschoolers' logical thinking, and explain the 3 major origins of abstract thought in preschoolers as identified by Vygotsky. Brain development is still rapid during the preschool years. Brain specialization allows for many new abilities. Myelination speeds connections between areas, and pruning makes the remaining connections more efficient. By 3 years of age, preschoolers use thinking to solve problems even better than before. They do not always have to use trial and error. Their problem-solving skills are affected by past sensory and motor experiences. Beginning between 3 and 4 years of age, one of the most important cognitive advances is symbolic thought. Symbolic thought is the ability to use symbols to represent objects, actions, or events from a person's world of experiences. Children learn symbolic thought through pretend play, also known as symbolic play, where they make associations between their real worlds and the symbols they use. Because of symbolic thought, children can separate actions from events. For example, a preschooler can understand that a car does not just go, but is used as a means of going to some place. Symbolic thought also enables children to separate thought from action. For example, a child can think about some actions without actually doing them. Symbolic thought affects a number of abilities: pretend play, mental images, drawing, language, and memory. During late toddlerhood, pretend play begins with the development of deferred imitation. Deferred imitation is a child's ability to imitate the actions of a model who is no longer present. Pretend play develops and changes in the following areas during the preschool years. Symbol realism. Children engaging in early pretend play prefer realistic symbols that closely represent the intended object, like a toy T-Rex for a big T-Rex. Later, children change their pretend play to include objects that may stand for anything they want, like a piece of wood standing for a saucepan. Context. Children's early pretend play takes place within the context of real experiences. As it develops, children might choose less realistic contexts. So they might start with playing house and end up with playing space aliens on Mars. Roles. Early pretend play involves children role-playing themselves or those similar to them. Later, they take on a greater variety of roles, such as role-playing adults or even animals. Number of actions. Early pretend play experiences often involve one action, such as combing hair. Later, they may pretend play a sequence of actions, like several grooming tasks, like combing their hair, brushing their teeth, taking a bath. Involvement of others. Early pretend play is usually done alone, but as it develops, children play pretend games with other children and sometimes even with adults. Mental images are another change. Mental images are symbols of objects and past experiences that are stored in the mind. These images function as a form of mental representation. The imagery is experienced through all sensory modes, such as the appearance, feel, sound, odor, or flavor of anything. Therefore, mental images resemble a perceptual experience but occur in the absence of that experience. Mental images are not exact copies of real objects and experiences, but they do relate to the real world. Mental images are triggered by words, new experiences, memories, and even what-if thoughts. Mental images function in preschoolers and even adults' thinking in the following ways. Memories are often stored as mental images. Through memory, a person recalls the past. As you read, learning is defined as an adaptation of a past understanding. You modify your current thinking based on your recall or memory, and then store the new learning in memory. Thus, learning and memory are interactive processes. Imagery is crucial to language meanings. Preschool children store the meanings of concrete words like cat, apple, building as mental images, although this does not work for more abstract words like hope or joy. As people of all ages hear or read words, they link the sounds or graphics to meanings through their mental images. Descriptive writers of both prose and poetry rely on their readers to create mental images from their words. Imagery is involved in spatial reasoning as a person sees how something would look if it was rotated, turned over, or synthesized by putting together shapes to form new shapes. Playing with jigsaw puzzles or block building helps aid mental imagery of young children. This early spatial imagery will allow adults to draw images from any perspective. Frank Lloyd Wright, the great American architect, said he used his mental images from childhood block building to create his designs. Mental imagery plays a crucial role in inventive or creative thinking. Creative preschoolers use mental imagery in their pretend play, artistic creations, and language. They imagine new what-if configurations for a marble chute or a building and refine their physical knowledge concepts. Adult inventors like Einstein and Tesla used mental imagery because it allowed them to modify their ideas quickly. In short, mental imagery plays a crucial role in all your thought processes. As for drawing, unlike younger children, preschoolers no longer scribble. Instead, they attempt to draw objects and depict their world through drawings. Preschoolers intend their drawings to be realistic. They draw what they think or know about a person, not what is visually accurate. For example, a side view of a goldfish in a drawing may show both eyes and even a smiling mouth. Drawing mixes the skills involved in pretend play and mental images. Preschool children draw first and then decide what their pictures represent. In contrast, older children decide what to draw, form a mental image of the object, and then draw it. As far as language, why do you think that language symbols are more abstract than drawing symbols? Well, spoken and written words are symbols used to represent ideas or actions. Compared with child-created symbols seen in pretense and drawing, language symbols are more abstract and more difficult for a child to understand. Unlike the symbols used in pretense or drawing, children do not decide on language symbols. Language symbols already exist in a culture, and therefore they must learn them. Therefore, words are more abstract when compared with most other symbols. For example, the word car does not look, sound, or move like a car. Memory is a complex mental process involved in most, if not all, aspects of thinking and learning. Memory begins at birth when the newborn remembers the rhythm and intonation of the mother's voice that they heard in the prenatal period. Infants have amazing, although rather short-term memories. Toddlers remember better and for much longer periods of time, and preschoolers will remember even more. A major change in memory occurs during the preschool years due to brain development and experiences. Preschoolers remember more and retain memories longer than younger children. Preschoolers remember not only images, but also language components. Preschoolers often replay their memories by talking about events or rehearsing what they've learned in a song or story. Memory capacity, or what a person does with his or her memory, not exactly how much is remembered, increases during the preschool years. Memory capacity increases in both working and their long-term memories. Working memory, we also call short-term memory, is critical for executive functioning and is closely related to Galinsky's essential life skills. Working memory improves a great deal in the preschool years. These improvements allow preschoolers to follow directions, connect events and stories, stay true to the pretend roles they play games with several rules, and follow new sequences of rules. Long-term memory includes explicit and implicit memories, and they continue to develop in the preschool years. Preschoolers' explicit memory develops as they learn more facts, concepts, and words associated with those facts and concepts. Implicit memories, especially motor skills, also dramatically increase as preschoolers play and learn self-help tasks. Preschoolers develop what is called episodic memory. Episodic memory, which is a type of explicit memory, is the memory of personal experiences and events. Episodic memory includes the emotion and the context of the event. People usually see themselves as actors in these memories. Episodic memories begin between the preschooler's 3rd and 4th birthdays. Even then, children may forget these early memories. Episodic memories are not crystallized or fully formed in their mind until 10 years of age. The inability to remember events before 3 or 4 years of age, or the forgetting of recalled events in the preschool and early years, is called infantile amnesia. Although more research is needed, the following is known about children's early episodic memories. Infants and toddlers do not have the thinking or language skills necessary to store memories of personal events. For life experiences to feel real to children, children must have a sense of self and personal identity. Cultural differences influence early memories. Individual-oriented cultures stress self-awareness more than group-oriented cultures. Group-oriented cultures talk more about events within the context of the group. Although there are wide variations among children within any culture, the earliest personal memories of children from group-oriented cultures occur a year or more later than children from individual-oriented cultures. All memories, including most episodic memories, fade with time or are replaced. Episodic memories are valuable. They make experiences and understandings more vivid. For example, seeing the Rocky Mountains, as compared with reading facts about them, would be far more meaningful and lasting in memory. Episodic memories also allow for a special type of cultural communication. Episodic memories or events and experiences bind people with these experiences closer together. Episodic memories may help in planning or decision making if future events bear similarity to a remembered event. In this case, a child can remember what helped the situation and what did not. Both Piaget and Vygotsky note that children gain new intellectual abilities by developing abstract meanings separate from their real world. Piaget focuses on the limitations of these abilities. Both theories will shape the understanding of a preschooler's intellectual world. Piaget describes the second stage of cognitive development as the preoperational stage. This is the stage children reach before they acquire logical thinking skills, which Piaget calls operations. These logical thinking skills require the mind to think through problems and act accordingly. Examples of logical thinking skills include combining ideas or objects, placing them in order, and engaging in if-then or cause-and-effect thinking. Preschool children have not entered the logical thinking stage yet. Just as toddlers who are walking are prone to missteps, preschool children who are thinking are prone to logical thinking errors. The preoperational stage spans 6 years of childhood, beginning in the last year of toddlerhood and extending through the preschool years and ending after the first 2 school years. The preoperational stage is divided into 2 substages, the preconceptional and the intuitive. The preconceptional substage, also known as symbolic substage, is a substage in which children 2 to 4 years begin to develop and understand some concepts. These children are able to form mental images of what they see around them. Many concepts are still incomplete or illogical in their mind. Some examples of these incomplete concepts include the identification of an object by one part or attribute rather than by several parts or attributes. For example, a preschooler might identify a dog as any animal that plays with a ball. The belief that if an attribute of an object changes or is not present, then that object becomes a different object. For example, a preschooler might believe that an unripe orange is a ball. The inability to distinguish between similar and same. If 2 objects share a similar attribute, a preschooler may see them as the same. For example, all collies are lassies and all hot stuff objects are stoves. They have a difficulty differentiating between people or objects and their symbols. For example, young preschoolers may see themselves and their photos as the same and may believe that anyone who wears a fire hat is a fireman. Because of this incomplete concept, pretend play and reality are not truly separated for preschoolers. Growth spurts in the brain always lead to leaps in the thinking process, which are referred to as substages and stages in intellectual development. A growth spurt in the brain helps preschoolers make a transition from the preconceptual to the intuitive substage. At this time, brain pruning refines the sensory and motor skills developed earlier. Memory and problem-solving functions increase. Functional specialization and lateralization of the brain begin toward the end of the intuitive substage. In the intuitive substage, children are sometimes able to grasp a problem solution by relying on their mental imagery rather than using logical reasoning. By using their intuition, or the natural ability to know something without evidence, they feel their way through problems instead of thinking logically about them. In the intuitive substage, children can imagine new roles for themselves. For example, they can imagine themselves as fathers, mother, or firemen. They can also imagine relationships between objects, like one doll might be a mother and the other doll is her baby. They understand how one factor affects another. For example, they can understand that a cart's being full of blocks means it's harder for them to push. And then they use intuition to solve problems. Older preschoolers may or may not solve problems correctly. For example, a preschooler may keep track of an object by envisioning it in his or her mind's eye instead of by logically thinking about where the object should be. While pre-operational children in the intuitive substage have many correct ideas due to the accuracy of their intuition, they are not logical in their thinking. Logical thinkers, unlike intuitive thinkers, construct rules to guide their thinking. For example, in an experiment with 3 balls, a rule is that one turn keeps the balls in the same order, but a half turn reverses the order. The intuitive thinker does not use the rule, but simply forms a mental image of the balls as the tube is turned. The child may track accurately for a few turns, but loses track after a few more turns. Why are these preschool children intuitive rather than logical? In his work, Piaget notes several obstacles to logical thinking that take place in preoperational children. First of all, egocentrism. Egocentrism is the preschooler's belief that everyone thinks in the same way and has the same ideas that he or she does. Egocentrism does not mean that children are selfish or too concerned with themselves, but rather that they view the world in relation to themselves. Egocentrism can cause the following problems to preschoolers' logical thought. It can lead them to believe that others like what they like. For example, they may offer others candy from their mouths because they are enjoying the candy and think that other people will too. They think others see objects the way they do. For example, if they think a slide is tall, they will think adults think it's tall too. They believe others understand what they are thinking. For they might leave out facts in telling about an event and become exasperated when adults ask questions to fill in the details because they believe that the adult should already know. They experience all events in reference to themselves. For example, they may believe that rain falls to keep him or her from playing in the sand, not just because rain actually falls because of the weather. They believe inanimate objects have attributes like their own. For example, they may think that if a toy is damaged, that the toy is hurting. They believe that all movements have purposes that relate to them. For example, they may believe the moon rises to make the night sky pretty for them to look at. They believe they can alter reality by their thinking. For example, in pretend play, they may believe they have become the person that they are role-playing. Centration is another problem. Because they try to solve problems through perception, they center their attention on only one part of an object or event instead of seeing all parts at the same time. This is called centration. For example, preschool children know that the amount of liquid in 2 equal-sized glasses is the same. But when the liquid of one container is poured into a tall beaker or a wide bowl, preschool children incorrectly think that the amount of liquid has changed, even though it is still the same, just because it looks different. They also have problems with transformations and reversibility. Centration makes it difficult for preschoolers to see transformations, which are sequences of changes. Preschool children tend to focus on single steps, stages, or events, and may have difficulty following transformations. Piaget describes preschoolers as focusing on each frame of a film rather than seeing a running story. If shown an object that stands upright and then falls, preoperational children will only draw the first state, in which the object is upright, or the last state, in which it lies horizontal. Because they have difficulty following transformations, preoperational children also struggle to trace actions in reverse, or reverse the transformations. They cannot follow a line of reasoning back to where it starts, which is called a lack of reversibility. For example, they cannot reverse or undo addition. If they know that adding 2 and 3 equals 5, they will not be able to understand that subtracting 2 from 5 equals 3. They have problems with transductive reasoning. They also use transductive reasoning, which means mentally linking events without using any logic. They often link one particular event or object with another without any reference to the general big picture. Reasoning this way causes flaws in logic, such as overgeneralization, which is the assumption that because something is true for one event or object, it is true for all similar events or objects. An example of overgeneralization might be concluding that all dogs are friendly because the child's own dog is friendly. Lastly, they have problems with cause and effect reasoning. Logic is required for understanding cause and effect. Because of this, their lack of logic causes many problems with cause and effect. Some of the problems include the belief that any observable attribute of an object can cause an outcome they have noted. In a recorded interview, Piaget asked a child, "The sun does not fall from the sky. Why?" The child responded, "Because it is hot." In this case, the child is saying the heat of the sun, which is an observable attribute, can affect the outcome or keep the sun from falling. Instead of saying because it is hot, he or she could have just as easily said because it is round, yellow, or far away. Transposition is the changing of order of cause and effect. For example, a preschooler might say, "Because I'm wearing my raincoat, it is raining," instead of recognizing that wearing a raincoat is an effect of the rain. Mistaken linking of events occurring close in time. If a mother makes coffee just before a father comes home from work each day, they may conclude that coffee brings the father home. And a belief that any event or cause must be recreated in precisely the same way to get the same effect. For example, if they experience many nighttime storms with lightning and thunder, they may conclude that it must be night before lightning causes thunder. So, I want you guys to think about how one obstacle to logical thought would affect a preschooler's behavior. How would you handle the behavior to encourage the child's intellectual development? Both Piaget and Vygotsky studied symbolic representation in children but came to different conclusions. Piaget believed that imitation, pretense, and language were indicator of a child's current level of thinking, whereas Vygotsky saw these preschool abilities as laying the foundation for more abstract thinking. In fact, he identified these abilities as 3 important origins to abstract thought in the preschool years. Pretend play props. Objects used in children's pretend play serve as foundations for imaginative thinking and abstract concepts. During pretend play, children first use realistic props and then they begin to use more abstract ones. Language. For preschoolers, language becomes more than a means to express knowledge or communicate with others. At this time, it becomes a tool for thinking. Language aids thought and vice versa. Children actually talk to themselves as they perform tasks, which is a way of thinking about their actions and staying on track. Over time, this kind of speech diminishes, but even adults sometimes whisper or talk quietly to themselves while working on a challenging task. By using language as part of the thinking process, children's language skills increase. Children want to learn more words and varying ways of using them to express their ever-growing knowledge. In this way, language and thinking impact each other. And then imitation. For preschoolers, imitative acts used in pretend play are a means of learning new skills. Lessons learned by imitation vary among cultures. For example, people in different cultures prepare different foods and may use different tools in the process. Scaffolding techniques also change during the preschool years. Studies of scaffolding for preschoolers note that scaffolding is not as hands-on as it was in the toddler's year. Generally, scaffolding during the preschool years involves a mentor directing the child's attention to a problem to be solved, suggesting some possible strategies, and monitoring their attempts with less directive feedback, and then continuing to direct the child through encouragement. All right, thank you for listening, guys. That is the end of our first section of Unit 5.